is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Unspoiled, covering Justified, Season 5, Episode 8, Whistle Past the Graveyard. In this episode, we meet Uncle Jack. He turns out to be Papa Jack. Also, I kind of want to be like, Gary, is that you? Welcome to Unspoiled.
On this lonely road, trying to make it home, doing it by my lonesome, pissed off through lonesome. I'm fighting for my soul, God, get at you, Lord. You're trying to vote hard, fall back, I go hard. On this lonely road, trying to make it home, doing it by my lonesome, pissed off through lonesome.
I was wondering if you were going to make that connection.
With him and Gary?
Because if you weren't going to point it out, I was.
Yeah, what? He's Gary if Gary didn't have privilege and education.
Yes, I was trying to think of the right way to say it, and that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is.
Just, man, you were born to lose. That is a hard thing to hear.
Yes.
Man, I can't blame him for not doing it well, because that, and you know what's kind of amazing? Do you ever watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
Nope, not yet.
He plays a recurring character on that show who is also kind of a loser, but in a very, like, boring way. Like, he's a loser in that he just doesn't have any imagination about how to live his life.
Okay.
And I kept, like, I see him and immediately I'm like, oh dear, what's this guy's deal gonna be? Because I already, I didn't even remember that he was from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I just remembered his face and I was like, oh, this guy's the worst. And then it turns out that he is the worst. So I'm sorry, Kyle Bornheimer, the actor, for being typecast as someone who sucks, but that's what's happened. Sorry about that, buddy. But yeah, this episode was full of surprises. This one was a good one.
I enjoyed it. I felt like it was. It's not a disposable one. I think I always go to disposable when it's not anything earth shattering. Mm-hmm. But I think there's a lot of good performances in it. It's a little bit of a lighter episode than a lot of them.
I guess it is. Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in this episode. I'm liking this season a lot more than I remember liking it. It's not in my top seasons, but I'm very much enjoying this.
Yeah, it's always nice when that happens. I had that happen with season 3 of Sherlock, where I was kind of like, oh, I guess we'll do this now. And then once we got into it, I was like, this is kind of awesome. I thought I hated this season. But yeah, there's I guess you're right about it being a lighter episode, but it feels like, I think it's that a lot of it feels so satisfying in these kind of small, petty ways that it didn't feel light to me, because I actually cared about what was happening, even though it wasn't really that consequential.
Okay, that's fair.
So yeah, cool. Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm Natasha,
and I'm Alan. Hi.
We missed a couple weeks in a row there, but it seemed like a lot longer because I forgot to post a couple of the episodes to iTunes because I haven't been doing my job right. So sorry about that, everyone. But you're going to get this one. And then next week, I'm going to take a vacation. And so we won't be here next week, but we will be back after that and pretty much finishing out until the end after that. As long as there are no foreseeable issues that arise or unforeseeable.
That is the plan. We really are going to get back on track with this.
Right.
So yeah, this episode is season 5, episode 8, Whistle Past the Graveyard, and this was written by Chris Provenzano. This is the 7th of 8 episodes he's written for Justified. This is directed by Peter Werner. This is the 8th of 8 episodes he's directed. They've both been working on Justified since season 1, and we are now winding down. We're like 2/3 through this season, and there's only one more to go.
Yeah, I am. A lot of them, the titles I kind of get. But this one, Whistle Past the Graveyard, is something that people say just about, trying to pretend you ain't scared, right? And I'm not really sure who that applies to here. I
didn't even know it as an idiom. Now that you've said that, I can totally see it, but that's not in my vocabulary at all. Yeah,
it's just sort of a weird, because I feel like, the show, a lot of it, because of it being about the criminal underworld, is about posturing and pretending to have more power or whatever than you do. So I feel like that title could, if you're going with it in that sense, could kind of apply to any of the episodes that we've seen. So I don't really know why it's called that specifically this time. But because I would almost feel like last episode, that title would apply more because of the, issues. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree. I think they just had a really cool episode title and they didn't know where to use it.
Right? Yeah, maybe that's it.
Some here. We got to call it something. It's definitely an oddball title, though.
Yeah. There are times when I have said before that I'm like, what is with this title? Because that's happened before. But, I always like to kind of be like, all right, I think I get it, and bring it up if I don't.
Right. So, all right. Well, shall we launch into this one?
Let's do it.
All right. So we open up in Mexico, in the same place that we left the episode. Except it's now morning. It's the aftermath of the massacre.
Mm-hmm.
And Alberto has shown up, and he is talking on the phone to Yoon. He relays the message back to Boyd that they all need to go with nothing, and their relationship is over.
Yikes.
Which is very understandable.
Yeah, right.
But Boyd counteroffers, and he says, I don't think there is a problem because I don't see any bodies because my guys went and picked them up and trucked them across the border and disposed of them ourselves. What do you think? And they're okay with it.
This dude's like, yeah, that'll work. Which I kind of wondered if he wasn't just saying, yeah, sure, that'll work, and then was going to back out of it again.
Right.
Because he'd be like, cool, he'll take care of the bodies, but I'm definitely still not working with this guy again, which I wouldn't blame him for, to be honest.
Yeah.
Although that's not great business to pull out of your deal like that. So.
But yeah, no, we'll see about that. But Boyd thinks on his feet, and they say he calls Yoon back, and they agree, and so they're on it. Except Boyd really has no idea how he's going to pull this off.
Yeah. They fooled me on this one. We said last episode because of the fake out, but there's a fake out this episode too.
That's true.
But yeah, I still don't really know how that works. Like, we'll get there, but I have a lot of questions about how that went.
We'll get there. We'll get there. But yeah, so they're on it, and somehow or another, he's going to transport these bodies. And luckily, though, Danny and Daryl, they have an idea. Because there's a guy. No, we can't call him. No, we should call him. No, we can't call him.
Oh, my God.
They decide. They bring up Flores, their old quote-unquote friend, who has a sister who they don't speak very highly of.
Mm-hmm.
And that means Flores probably isn't going to want anything to do with them. But, well, okay. Let's try him anyway.
I love the way that because this show normally has us see both sides of a fake out. Like... Mm-hmm. And this season, they've been doing a lot of just like, oh, we're not going to show you everything. Between, what happened with Johnny earlier. I don't even mean like last episode. I mean with Johnny and Hot Rod.
Right.
But definitely when it's characters like the Crows, who we've been intimate with as viewers, and seen everything that's going on with them, for them to keep this whole plan that they've got going secret is sort of an interesting play that the show hasn't really done before, I don't feel like.
That's true. We do usually get a much bigger window into our antagonists.
Yeah.
And they really are playing it much closer to the vest than we're used to.
Yeah, so we're kind of in the same situation as Boyd, where we're like, okay, there's clearly something going on. Like, Boyd's not stupid. He can tell that they've planned this, but he can't figure out what the deal is with the play they're making.
Right.
And that's super annoying to him, as of course it would be. Although I did really like the line where Dewey's like, well, what are we going to do with those bodies? I hope they don't open it and see. And his brother's like, oh, don't worry. We'll hide them underneath all that heroin. Or his cousin. Sorry, not his brother. Yeah. But yeah, I like that line a lot. No, it's fine.
Yeah, good old Dewey. So Boyd says, do it. This is their fault, so it is on them to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Then we go to Kendall on the roadside, and he is picked up by Uncle Jack, who shows up in a very cool car wearing super cool sunglasses, until the camera swings around and we see that they're actually missing one of the arms.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even realize that.
Oh, yeah, I thought that's like such a perfect encapsulation of his character.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. You're right.
Yep. Super cool sunglasses as long as you're looking at it from this angle.
Yep.
Because as soon as you turn it, you spin it around, they are incomplete. So he picks up Kendall, and then they go and get Wendy, and Uncle Jack takes them out to breakfast.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out the dynamic here because it's obvious that there's something else happening. And
Right.
so when it turns out that and I love the fact that I've been all season like, how is he related to them? And I had no idea that was a plot point, Yep. I just was like, I'm trying to nail down what to call him. And the show's like, yeah, well, we'll let you know in a second. Just hold on.
Yeah, and I forgot. I knew that Kendall and his relationship with their family, I knew it was somewhere in the season, but I really couldn't remember exactly what it was and exactly how it got resolved and everything. And so I was thinking the exact same thing. I'm like, oh, that's right. That's right. He is. This is where we learn. Well, no, so we don't learn it in this scene. We learn it very soon after. This scene. Well, let me take a step back. What were your first impressions of him before you learn, just what a jack-off he is?
First impression was I thought he was a fucking pervert that was coming to, because he's like, hey, want to get in the car? I've got some candy. And I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? Because they don't give any prelude to let us know that he's related in like the whole thing. And then once it turns out that he's Jack, then I was like, okay, is he just sort of I'm trying to think of somebody to relate him to, like Daphne's brother on Frasier. He's this shiftless type that never actually has anywhere to stay and seems like he just basically is able to, he's sort of like Kramer from Seinfeld, where he's able to like live this lifestyle that you're like, how though? And it's because he purely lucks his way into all of it all the time. Gotcha. So I thought that he was going to be kind of like that, where he just manages to have this like life that sort of seems glittery weirdly, and easy, but that most people could not pull off, and that it could give this kid an impression of being able to do things that really most people aren't ever able to get away with. And it turns out that he like kind of wants everybody to think that, but he's just not pulling it off either.
Yeah, he's such a bullshitter.
Yeah, so he does a good job. I think the show does a good job of giving us a little glimpse of how people could be fooled by him initially. Right. Like he really is pretty convincing, even though there's a part of you that can see that he's full of shit. There's what is actually happening is so out of the realm of what you were expecting that it just doesn't even enter your mind. So you don't really know where to go with it. So you're like, yeah, I guess I'll take him at his word, since I can't think of what the fuck would be really happening right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, he's got this little bit of a used car salesman thing where he looks like slick and put together and suit jacket and the whole thing, but there's just something about it that's not quite right. And if he really was doing quite as well as he claims, he wouldn't look exactly the way he looks. But he is, I said, he's charming. He talks fast. He's not a bad-looking guy. He, like, in small doses, you can absolutely see how this guy just gets away with stuff left, right, and center. But really, he is grasping at straws everywhere.
Yeah.
Because he's got nothing.
Yeah, the talking fast thing, I thought maybe that the lifestyle thing that I had gotten it right, but that he was like an addict or something.
Oh, okay.
And that was part of what was like causing him to maybe fall apart. But it's just that falling apart is the lifestyle. That is the thing.
Just happens to be a mess.
Yep.
So, yeah, they have this whole conversation, and Jack wants to take Kendall on a roller coaster tour of Ohio.
Roller coaster. Oh, my God.
Roller coaster.
Fucking goober.
And Wendy gets up to go to the bathroom, and there's this little scene that's basically silent where she goes into the bathroom and has a little moment where she kind of freaks out to herself and has to pull herself together.
Yeah, I didn't get that, like this is the point where I should have been like, oh, there's a relationship thing happening here, but I still wasn't getting it. I was like, what is the deal? I wondered if maybe like, because I'm still over here thinking that there is that he's an uncle. And so there was a part of me that was like, did he abuse her at one point and just seeing him again is freaking her out,
Right.
And it turns out that's not like completely off. It's just, just a different dynamic than what I had expected.
Yeah, well, it's such a great scene because it is completely silent. And if you haven't figured it out by now that there's something wrong with this guy, just her having to go in and stare herself down and calm herself and just, okay, let's go. That should be enough to tip you off that, like, okay, something's wrong here.
Yeah.
I really like that choice. But yeah, she comes out of the bathroom ready to deal with this, and they're already gone. So we cut to her later, frantically calling. Finally, Kendall has picked up, and he tells her they're on their way to Ohio. They'll be back in a little bit.
What is she fucking thinking?
Yeah, and what the hell is she gonna do? But as she's finishing up this conversation, she walks back into the bar, and this is where she meets Michael, who is looking for a Jack Anderson, which I totally didn't realize was Uncle Jack for a second.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I could see how you could miss that, yeah.
Yeah. And, he is intimidating as hell.
She manages to really keep her cool here. Like, I was super impressed. If I hadn't realized what was happening, I wouldn't have thought she was lying. I would have just thought she was nervous. You know what I mean?
Well, there's that moment where she goes behind the bar and he goes, I will take that drink. And he's clearly looking for her to be like grabbing the gun from behind the bar or whatever. But nope, she's said she plays it so smart.
Yeah. Just
throwing everything in the trash bag.
Not quite smart enough because he's able to track her down anyway, like in a second.
True.
But
True.
Yeah.
But yeah, she is able to extricate herself and blow some holes in his tires and then just takes off as fast as she can.
And this guy really is good at his voice. Holy shit. He has the voice of like, I mean, it sounds like a mouthful of gravel. It's just, this is a man who has smoked since he was six years old. So yeah, this guy was definitely made me nervous, even though he doesn't do, other than being very insistent, who was that on the phone? He doesn't really do or say anything that's outright threatening, even though you know perfectly well that he is threatening. It's just the way that he stands and looks at her is super unnerving. So yeah, this guy's good.
He's got a whole Ron Perlman thing going on where he's not quite so craggy as Ron Perlman is, but it just really is like, this is not a man that you want to mess with.
Craggy. That's a good word.
Thank you. So, yeah, Wendy takes off and we go to our opening credits. We come back and we now go back to Raylan, and he meets Allison at her front door with a new bikini and with an offer to go to Florida. It turns out he didn't win a trip to Florida for being caller 7, but he won $2,000.
Right, which is better.
Right? So he wants to go and blow that on a romantic weekend. But he's not the suavest, of course.
No. He's just like, I couldn't figure it out. But the fact that she winds up being like, yeah, what's the word I'm looking for? There is obviously some reticence when she says yes, and I really did think that it was just because of the ex-wife thing, which surprised me. But once you find out later that she's just dumping him, you're like, okay. So that was just kind of like an aspect of what made her uncomfortable, but it wasn't the actual thing, which makes a lot more sense, because if you're not the most cool with this dude, then the idea of going with him to see his family is even less like appealing. because you're just not invested anyway. And that's an extra kind of level that most people, and I think that's part of him promising, like, oh, I didn't think you'd even meet her, might have been like one of the only reasons that she decided that she was okay to go, because it wasn't him trying to take things to the next level, as they say. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So have your feelings on Allison changed at all? Because when you first met her, you really didn't like her. And I've already said I'm not a fan of her.
Mm-hmm.
But you feel any differently on her now that we're...
Do you know what? It's kind of like rude of me to Raylan. Sorry, Raylan. But seriously, my respect for her goes up the instant she dumps him. Pretty much. He is such trouble, and it's so clear that any woman that has enough self-respect to just cut their losses when it comes to this guy is a smart lady. So I didn't think much of her to begin with because she seemed really shady. But, and there could be other reasons for her dumping him that I have not yet seen. But as far as I'm concerned, the dumping is coming from him basically being willing to let this woman and her kids swing because he just didn't feel like it, and being really self-centered. And I think that has been something that has been ignored by women in the relationships that he's been in way too many times. And you can excuse it in a lot of cases because Ava was, before Raylan, she was married to a dealer who was a fucking abusive psycho. So her standards are going to be way low. Mm-hmm. We have the woman who ran that bar, whose name I forgot. Juliet?
Yep.
Is it?
No, not Juliet, but I forget it also. So we can call her Juliet.
And she was an actual con artist. So she's going to, deal with whatever. So that's fine. We have Winona who fucking broke up with him once already. So her getting back with him, well, you just keep making the same mistakes. So I guess. And who else? There's another woman. Isn't there?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there have been little one-offs.
Yeah.
Like there was the lady who he had to bodyguard during the trial for the mountaintop back in season 2. She was around for a couple episodes.
But he never actually slept with her, right? She was just trying to.
Yeah, exactly. So no, I mean those are the major ones, and then Allison now in season 5.
Yeah, so I think the other women I can understand why they didn't kick him to the curb quite, because they just lived lives that this kind of thing might seem almost normal, but it's nice to finally have one of these women that's involved with him just be kind of like, ooh, you know what, buddy? I don't think so. And like I said, it might turn out that she has other motivations for dumping him, but whatever they are, I approve pretty much. So
fair enough.
he's somebody who's motivated by the right things a lot of the time, not always, but he is just such a spoiled brat in a lot of ways. And he is not someone whose heart is in the right place when it comes to his personal life.
Sure.
He's just got he's somebody who his career is everything. And anything else that he does is going to come second. Even if he lies to himself and says it's not, it will. It's just it.
Yep. No, he's content to have a personal life when it is convenient for him.
Yeah, exactly.
He wants to let that all go on pause as soon as and whenever he needs to go do something for his job.
Yep.
So... okay, I was just curious about that because I feel like since we've had Allison around for a little bit now, and she, as flighty as she first appears, she's got a little more going on. So, Okay, cool. But yeah, so Allison does agree to go eventually, and he gets a call from Wendy, who is frantic. She needs his help. Raylan's really not interested, but Wendy says she's going to give up information on her brothers, and Allison won't let him refuse once she hears that the kid's in danger.
Yeah, she looks at him like, are you fucking shitting me, when he acts like he's not going to do it.
Yeah.
Which is the correct reaction.
Yes, both for a decent human being and anyone who knows Raylan. Honestly, I don't think that he could just let that go.
Right,
So,
yeah.
He would be halfway on the plane and then skydive out because he feels bad and has to
Probably.
We go back down to Mexico, and we have a little conversation between Boyd and Daryl as they are driving back in their box truck until the boys in the back all start fighting because they are freaking out being stuck in the back seat. It's stuck in the storage area full of dead bodies.
Understandable. Like, honestly, though, while it's understandable, it's like, considering what's on the line, though, guys, this is really not too much to ask. So I get it, but also, like, fucking stop being babies and get over it.
Well, I guess I should amend that. Really, it's Dewey who is freaking out.
That's
because,
true. Yeah.
Yeah, the guy inside of him is letting go, as he says.
Ew.
And yeah, and so they're all pissed off, and Boyd decides, okay, we clearly need to get a second car, and Dewey requests one with air conditioning because he's Dewey.
Yeah,
Again, it's not a terrible question to ask, really, but you know. So we go back then to Kendall and Jack. And Jack, they're parked somewhere, and Jack gets a phone call about a declined credit card. And then he suddenly goes, you know what? Ohio's stupid. We should go to Six Flags, Texas instead.
Yeah. Kendall's like, listen, buddy. I don't know if you know who my family is, but I've seen this kind of behavior and this panic bullshit before, so maybe just fucking tell me what's happening here. Yeah. I feel so bad for this kid. He deserves so much better.
But I'm very impressed with his observation, because the easy play in this is to make the kid just goofily going along with Uncle Jack, who's, you know, yeah, well, sure, let's go to Texas. Six Flags is awesome. You know, you could write this kid as totally buying into this con artist. And instead, Kendall, he knows what's up. And he knows more than they do, or he knows more than they think he does. He totally gets, like, yeah, my Uncle Jack is kind of a slimeball.
Right.
And by the way, I figured out that you're my dad. So he's not completely, you know, out of that little kid phase.
Right.
Because Jack explains sort of what's going on and said, but he concocts this story about how he saved a woman from being raped.
Yep.
And Kendall, you can see how badly he wants to believe that that's what's going on.
Yeah, he really, like, that, his acting there is really good. Like, he looks at the ground like his heart is just going, that's not what's happening. But a part of him's going, but what if it is, though? You know, like, oh, I felt so bad for him in that moment.
Yeah, and I mean, and it speaks, I think, can't speak from experience, but I think it's any kid who's ever had an absentee dad who shows up twice a year.
Right, yeah.
Want to believe what everything your dad says and have a great relationship with him. And even if they're not telling you he's your dad, you figure it out, so you know you want Uncle Jack to be a great guy and to be a fun guy.
Right.
So, and you want him to be I saved a woman from getting assaulted guy.
Yep.
So, yeah.
The hero. You want Dad to be a hero.
Yes. Exactly. So, yeah, they said, this kid is great. He's really, really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know where they found him, but I feel like I want to see him in other stuff, although he's going to be getting older now, so he probably won't be able to get these same roles, but...
Yeah, he's got to be coming up on 20 now, 17, 18, 19, something like that. Yeah, but then Jack is able to turn all this around on him by just saying, well, you know, I should probably just drive you home. I really don't think you should be involved in this, and just that shitty reverse psychology that he completely plays into, because at the end of the day, he is still 13. Yeah,
that's true. That's something that I keep, like, kind of wanting to forget, I guess, is because he's in such a bad situation that I want him to have the mind of an adult so that he can't get hurt as easily.
Right.
But he is a kid. No matter how savvy he really is, in the end, he's a child, and he needs somebody looking out for him, and fucking nobody is. Like, his mom is barely. She only is ever looking out for him when shit hits the fan, but she's not there keeping an eye on him to make sure it doesn't go that way to begin with.
Right.
So,
Wendy's been a pretty consistent presence throughout this season, but at the same time, she let her brothers just go ahead and take him out of state, possibly forever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and she didn't seem to. And she was apparently content to let them stay that way until they got in trouble.
Right.
So, yeah, it sucks. In prison, we have a really quick scene with Penny and Ava, who are alone in the bathroom, and Penny dislocates Ava's shoulder.
Oh my God, this was so hard to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to want something so bad to, like, do this to yourself. I just can't imagine. You got to be so desperate. I hope I never reach that level of desperate, man.
Yeah, right?
Oh, God.
Yeah. So, it's a real short scene, and then we just end with Ava on the ground, clutching her arm, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else.
Right.
And we're going to come back to them in just a few minutes. We go to commercial, we come back, and Wendy meets up with Raylan, and they set off to find Kendall. Based on the cell phone call, Raylan was able to get a general idea of where they are.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really it. And they bicker back and forth. Wendy accuses Raylan of being obsessed with her family, which isn't really true.
Right.
But we've seen Raylan be obsessed, and he's really not. Like, I guess I feel like every time someone levels an accusation at Raylan, I expect it's going to be true. He's such a flawed person. But
that's funny.
But yeah, they get to set off and have a road trip this episode, which is fine by me.
Yeah, all right. We'll get to the end of this, and then I want to talk about Wendy. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Back with Jack and Kendall, they need to switch cars. So Jack tries to get Kendall to help him steal a car. And Kendall is completely not here for it.
Yeah.
They get into an argument. He insists Jack's got to stop lying to him about everything. And this is when he says, "By the way, I know you're my dad."
Surprise.
Yeah. And Wendy is his mom. And no one told him he can just figure it out because
he's not a dummy.
Not a dummy. Exactly. And during this argument, they get interrupted by this senior citizen who owns the car and just gets up and takes the car from them while they're talking.
I love this so much. They're like, it's just a really nice underline to the "you were born to lose" thing.
Yeah.
You're going to try and steal a car, and he's literally going to walk up and just be like, "I don't think so," and be an old fucking man with no weapon, and it's not like there's this big standoff. It's just a very quiet, like, "No, this is mine." And you're just too much of a tool to be able to do shit about it.
Yeah,
that sounds right.
That's funny because that isn't how I saw it, but I like that. The thing it reminded me of is these things like, I'm going to go steal this car because it's an easy car to steal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that car belongs to somebody. Somebody is going to come out of the CVS and not have a car. And because you decided you needed to go, joyriding with your buddies or go on the run from, this angry guy. But I just like this idea of Kendall feeling really uncomfortable with this and Jack trying to talk him into it. And then the victim shows up and it's just a little old man.
Yeah.
So, just underscoring that, Jack, you suck.
Yeah. Yeah, he does. And he doesn't think about that shit at all.
Right. So, they get interrupted by this guy. They lose the car they're about to steal. And then Jack more or less comes clean about what he's been doing, or cleaner. That he's been skimming money from poker games, and he's been running with oil field workers, and he's got $35,000 that he owes to the guy who's chasing him down.
Yeah, such a weird, how exactly does this work? Like, what's the deal with the oil field? I don't really understand this scam.
I don't really either, but I think it's just something that I feel like it's something that he's trying to put this in a light of, yes, I stole a bunch of money, but I was about to get rich off of this. And as a crow, I know that you value doing something to get rich. He still wants to look good for Kendall.
Okay, yeah.
that's how I'm seeing it, is that this whole thing, it's still bullshit. It's closer to the truth, but it's still just him trying to twist it in a way so he looks like he is doing this to be a hero, or at least maybe not a hero, but a, this is because he needs this because he's got an angle.
Right. I've been wronged, but I was almost successful. And
right.
Yeah. Yeah. I see that.
And then like on cue, Michael shows up, and in the middle of the conversation, Jack just ditches his child.
Runs.
And
his
runs.
shitbag.
Yeah. And Michael catches up to him, stops next to Kendall, and just goes, "What a pussy."
Honestly.
Yeah.
Correct reaction.
Exactly. Now,
how do we know though how he tracked him down?
We don't. We never find out.
Okay, because that's the main thing that I was just kind of like, but wait a second, how did he find him that fast? Okay.
Yeah, no, we don't know. He is just very determined, apparently.
Okay. So,
back in prison, Ava's shoulder is being tended to by a nurse who we hear, the subtitles tell me is Nurse Rowena.
Okay.
And she's going to give Ava pain meds, and so Ava says, "Hey, so I hear that you know a way to get more powerful pain meds," and she gets completely shut down.
I kind of figured what happens was what it was, because how are you going to walk in there and say that shit, you dummy?
Yeah.
Like, duh.
Yeah, and the nurse tells her, "If you dislocated your own shoulder just for that, you're an idiot."
Yep. I love Ava's face. She's just like, yeah, you're correct. I am an idiot. My bad.
So, back in the car, Wendy and Raylan are talking. Raylan wants to know what's going on with her brothers, and she says they are in Mexico right now. Mm-hmm. And Raylan wants to know more, and she refuses to tell. Oh, actually, no, I'm sorry. That
was earlier. That was the deal. Yeah.
That was earlier. But Raylan's trying to get more information about Mexico, and it's not working out. But she does say, Kendall's my son, and Jack is my ex-husband, and help.
Right.
So they get a call from Jack, who is, kind of out of breath and hiding behind a wall. And he wants her to go get one of her brothers, Daryl or Dilly or Danny or whoever, because he messed up really bad, and now this guy has Kendall.
I'll say this for this guy. As much as he's a shitbag loser, it really does seem like he has at least the bare minimum of concern about his child. The most bare minimum. Because a lot of dudes would just be like, shit, he got Kendall, but he didn't get me. Bye. Like, I feel like he is only 2 or 3 steps away from being that guy.
I guess, yes.
I'm not denying that is a low bar, but I really kind of thought that's what he was going to do.
Yeah, because it's not even like he said to Kendall, like, "Kendall, run," and then like the guy caught up to Kendall and Jack, before Jack could do anything or anything. He just left him. He didn't even say anything. He didn't warn him. He just said bye. Yeah, and took off.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess if you want to put him up on that bare minimum pedestal, then you're welcome to do so. But, yeah, and then even here, he doesn't want to fix it. He wants Wendy to get a brother to fix it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because maybe he has more self-awareness than I thought and knows that he is incapable of fixing it because he's super terrible at life.
Also possible. And Wendy wonders how this guy showed up. And this is just Raylan. This is Raylan's explanation to your questions. Sometimes shooting out a man's tires ain't enough. Maybe he had a second car or a second driver keeping tabs on the situation, or maybe he's just a bad dude at hunting people down.
Right.
So, turns out Michael is a bad dude at hunting people down. She's very confused about how Michael found her son and his father before the U.S. Marshal could. And Raylan doesn't really care because he just wants to get Kendall back, so Wendy will hold up her part of the deal.
Yeah.
And rat out of her family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right.
That's the mode Raylan is in right now.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Back in prison again, Ava has a conversation with Judith in the mess hall about, I guess it's about religion, and it's about how men are the root of all of their problems.
That was so funny. Like 90% of the women in here are here because of a man, and I think assume that's true for you. And Ava just doesn't say anything, and she just sort of snickers, like, mm-hmm. I'm like, that's not really fair. She's definitely there because she made the choices that she made. But it is kind of funny because, just, it's not like he was not related to the problem. So she is right a little bit.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah. And Boyd, being as far away as he is now a convenient target for all of her gripes.
Yeah.
And then Judith just leaves her with a little reminder that, by the way, you still need to get these drugs in the prison, so hurry the fuck up.
Yep. Girl.
Yeah.
I'm just like, she doesn't even know that Boyd's in Mexico, right?
No, she doesn't know what's going on. She's, as far as we're aware, she's totally divorced from everything going on outside.
Because I think it's the nurse later that asks her, can you rely on him? And she says yes. And I'm like, oh, girl, like, you keep on promising all this stuff, and he's not even in the fucking country right now. Like, you better hope that he gets home in a couple days, because I feel like a drive back up to Kentucky from fucking Mexico is going to take a minute.
Yeah, but I think the last thing she knew is that he had the connect up in Canada, and I think she knew that went sour, but that they had another connect down in Mexico. I think that was, at most, that's what she could know. So, yeah, all she knows is that her fiancé deals in heroin, and he's very, very smart.
Right.
Back outside prison, Jack is at a shopping center or something, and he is just finishing up a call with Michael where they set up a meet to exchange Kendall for the $35,000, which is actually only $20,000.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah.
You fucking, this guy.
Yeah, and Wendy and Jack bicker back and forth about stuff, about whose fault this is. And this is where Raylan just says, like, just sets them straight and tells Jack that you're born to lose. Lose well for once. You might earn some respect.
Which sort of seems to, like, hit something for him. Like, there's a little, I don't know. Like, it resonates a tiny bit more than he, like, really wants it to. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I feel like everyone can relate to wanting to, if you're going to lose well.
Mm-hmm.
But if he wants to accept that part of the statement, he's got to accept the first part of the statement that he's born to lose.
Yeah.
So it's, I hear what he's saying, but I don't know. Fuck that guy. Or hopefully, I don't know. Yeah, he's wrestling with that. Clearly.
Yeah. I have so many mixed feelings about it. Like, obviously, Raylan's right. But also, if maybe he wouldn't be born to lose if he didn't constantly try and just bite off more. Like, he's just overestimating what he's capable of.
Right.
And maybe just, I'm not sure if it's just that he overestimates his own capability, or if it's also just being greedy, or a combination, or underestimating how smart other people are. Like, it doesn't have to be just one of the things, but I'm kind of like curious about what it really comes down to in the end. I think it's probably underestimating other people. But,
Yeah, I don't know. I always wrestle with characters like this and characters like Gary, although Gary was at least, like, moderately successful.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I work at a college, like I've said before, and the typical student at my college is not 18 years old out of high school. They are people who are in their mid-30s. They have kids. They have jobs. They have all these other things, and they have suddenly figured out they need to go back to school and make something better of themselves, or they need to secure their position. They want to move up in the organization.
Right.
They are people who are trying to change who they are, and I think a lot of them have at various points been told that they are born to lose. You suck. Get over it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always struggle with these characters who seem set up to be born to lose unless they have some kind of a redemption arc coming. Because I just hate to believe that about anybody. But someone like Jack makes it so easy to believe.
Right.
And unfortunately, so many real-life people make it very easy to believe.
Yeah, and it really is the kind of, like, because I get really frustrated. For example, my mom is somebody who tends to think that if something's meant to be, that it will just work out for you.
Yeah.
And it's sort of this, like, mentality that's based off of, like, sound bites of successful business people that have, like, they struck gold on this idea, and the article makes it sound like overnight everything just fell into place and skips over the 10 years of rejection and hard work that came before all of that happened. And so she will just give up if things don't immediately work out. And, like, work out meaning more than just going okay. Like, if it doesn't seem to turn into an amazing success, she's just like, well, I don't know what more I'm supposed to do. And I'm like, yo, I am on year 5 of making this podcast constantly and just barely starting to be able to make a living. Things happen way slower than any of us want to believe they do. Yeah. But we have these crazy expectations based on what we, read about online, what we see in, montages in the movies that make it just seem all glamorous and meant to be. And I kind of wonder if there isn't some of that happening with him too, is that he just thinks like that it's all just gonna work out, and when it doesn't, he's genuinely surprised. I don't know. Yeah. There's just, he's an interesting character. I kind of like want to see more of him in a weird way, even though I know that anywhere he goes, it's going to get fucked up.
Sure. But, that story reminded me of our high school theater director, Mr. Rinaldi. We were coming up on the beginning of a show at one point, like a week away or something, and stuff just wasn't working right. And so he was sort of kvetching to me. And I said to him, I'm sure things will come together. Don't worry. And he stopped and looked me in the eye and said, it'll all come together is what people say while the rest of us are busting our asses to make this work.
Oh, shit. Oh, shit.
I've never forgotten that. So
that is a really good way to say that. I love it.
Yeah. I was like, okay. Lesson learned. Lesson learned. Yeah. So poor Jack. Born to lose. Or is he? We go back down south to Mexico, and Boyd and Daryl and the gang are driving at night. They found a second car somewhere, and they get stopped by the police. And Boyd spins this story about how they're missionaries. And we learn Jimmy speaks Spanish, which is
that was fun.
Go Jimmy, way to have a skill set.
Right.
So, yeah, they sort of dance around this completely ridiculous cover story, which is pretty funny.
I loved it so much because it's so obvious that they are lying. The cops know that they're lying, and they know that they're lying. Yes. But everybody's just going with this whole nonsense anyway. It was very enjoyable.
Yeah, I love Daryl's little interjections into the story, into the thing as well.
Right? Preach.
And eventually they get tired of that. And and I love the cop mentioned them. That our country is 80% Catholic already, right?
Right.
And Boyd says, well, we're here for the other 20%.
I wanted him to just be like, because my dad still tried to minister to Catholics because Catholics weren't Christians in his eyes.
Right.
So I kind of wanted to be like, if they were Baptists, the Catholic thing would not count, but okay.
I kind of love that. Eventually, though, they get down to brass tacks, and the cops shake them down for $1,000. And
right.
Daryl tries to object, and so the price immediately jumps up to $2,000. And Boyd just says, all right, fine. He pulls out his money, and he licks off $2,000. And then because he showed he had more money, he's got to give over all of it. And then they say, great, thank you. And by the way, we're taking your van full of contraband.
I was like, oh no.
Yeah, nothing goes right. And yeah, we're left with exactly that feeling. So, back in Kentucky, Raylan and Jack and Wendy finally meet up with Michael, returning Kendall. And things seem to go okay.
Oh my God.
Until Michael says he's not there for the money. He's there to beat up Jack because Michael's son was Jack's partner and caught Jack skimming. And then so Jack put him in a coma with a brick to the head.
That is some shit.
Yeah. Yeah. So even all this sort of low-key con artist skimming from criminals and sticking it to the man stuff is like, no, he got caught, so he bricked a guy and took off.
That is like, there's this moment where Kendall really is like, oh, really? The rapist? Like, he really, and he says, like, I didn't believe it, but you hear in his voice that he's, like, pleasantly surprised for a second. Oh, it was so heartbreaking.
Yeah. And, yeah, this is where Raylan has the closest thing he has in this episode to, like, a hero moment.
Right.
Where he steps in and announces there's going to be a new deal. You're both under arrest. Jack, because you're a fugitive, and Michael, because you're a dick. And then Michael lays into Jack, gets a couple of shots on him, and then Raylan clubs him in the back of the head with his pistol.
So satisfying.
Yeah. Yeah, when all is said and done, I'm pretty okay with that.
Yeah, like, Raylan pisses me off all the time, but that's why you keep watching, is because everybody else is more of an asshole than he is almost every time. So,
Yeah, and then Jack and Michael get taken into custody, and Wendy has her come to Jesus moment, I guess, with Kendall, where she says, like, yeah, I'm your mom.
Yep.
And you want this to go now. And he just, I guess he's just busy being a teenager, but he just kind of says, I don't care, and then calls her sis.
Yeah. Yeah. And she tries to be like, well, at least you only got half the Crowder DNA or the Crow DNA. And he's like, you do see what my dad is, right? Like,
yeah.
It doesn't really help.
And both of them are fantastic in this scene.
Yeah, they are.
Really are. They do a lot of great nonverbal acting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like, I don't know where they got this kid. I keep saying that, but seriously, I don't know how he isn't in more stuff, because he's just really good. He's totally convincing. There are so many instances with younger actors that, while they're pretty good, they bring me out of it here and there with little things, and that never happens with him.
Yeah. I'm looking him up right now. I don't know what else. If there's anything else. He's been Jacob Laughlin is his name.
Laughlin, okay.
He is, he was in the Maze Runner, the Scorch Trials.
Oh, okay.
In Texas Rising, The Sun. And apparently he's in the next Maze Runner movie, so that's next year. And he was in Mud prior to Justified. Which is
Mud! Okay, maybe, because I kind of recognized him, but Mud was a movie that I started and watched for about 30 minutes and then was like, yeah, no, and just shut it off. So I bet that is part of what why he was ringing a bell for me when I saw him.
He in 1996. He is 21 right now. He'll be in July.
Oh man, the sound is doing that thing. Okay, I tell you what. I wanted to take a quick break anyway, and since we're going to have to hang up and reconnect, why don't we take that break right now? So everyone, we will be back right after these messages. Unspoiled is a listener-funded network. Support us by becoming a patron at patreon.com/unspoiled and get access to exclusive content and additional bonuses. Or you can shop on Amazon at unspoiledpodcast.com/Amazon.
Moony, wormtail, padfoot, and prongs.
Prongs. What has prongs? All I can think of is a lobster. That's not a good animal to turn into.
And who brought us here, John? The island.
In this episode, an awful lot for a model airplane. What the fuck, Kate? Welcome to Unspoiled, the Constant.
You're the Slayer, and we're like the Slayerettes.
I'm so into this outfit just because I have had enough khaki camel toe with this show for the rest of my life.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you win. You die.
What do his guards do as he is murdered? A, anything. B, nothing. Unspoiled. Experience your favorites again for the first time. Okay, and we are back. Sorry about that, everyone. So you said he was... How old?
He was born in 1996, July 30th, so he is about to be 21.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, okay. Then never mind. He's no good anymore. Sorry, kid. Unless you're younger than 17, you have no value in Hollywood.
I'm just looking at some pictures of him from a movie he was in this year, and he got lanky. Like, he really kind of, like, thinned out. And
wow, and he's already thin.
Yeah, he does not look like the same person to me at all.
That's funny.
Then again, bad with faces. We all know this. So
right.
maybe he looks exactly the same.
It's a photo of a totally different person. Oh, he looks so different. Yeah. Oops.
Yeah. So yeah, and that mostly brings this scene to a close. This plot to a close. We're going to get one more scene in a moment, but we briefly go back to prison, into the showers. And that the nurse shows up escorted by a corrections officer to check in with Ava. And she drags her around the corner, so they're sort of hidden by the partition.
Mm-hmm.
And she's mostly just pissed at her that she came up to her basically in public.
Yeah. Dummy.
Yeah. And she says that she will help her as long as, one, Judith can never know that this nurse is the connection.
Mm-hmm.
And two, Ava's guy on the outside has got to do a favor for her, but we don't find out what that is.
Yeah, she's like, you have to promise to do it, but also I won't tell you what it is. So I'm like, Jesus, nobody likes that deal.
Yeah, Ava doesn't know either, but she agrees, because what choice does she have?
Mm-hmm.
After this scene, we go back to Raylan, and Raylan has a little scene with Kendall, where he tries to give him some life advice. And Kendall wants to hear none of it from a cop.
Yeah, I mean, I feel you.
Yeah. But it's not bad advice. And, again, when you do know where Raylan has come from, there's a lot more there than this kid would assume.
Yeah, I wish that Raylan had gone into a little bit more detail about his dad, because just saying that he was like, the number one son of a bitch isn't really getting across the level that because son of a bitch just makes it sound like he was a shitty person, like, oh, he beat me up, but he was just the same kind of person. He was a petty criminal with a cruel streak and a weird loyalty to family that didn't really extend to actually, like, being a decent human being.
Right.
So it is so similar, but he doesn't really like try and get that across. And I understand why not, because he's not somebody to open up ever. But I'm hoping that somehow Kendall will like find out at some point who Raylan's dad was and get a better picture from that, you know, like, because, yeah, his dad is like legendary.
You know, I kind of have this little vignette in the back of my head where I really want this scene to be sort of the photo negative of the opening of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where young Indiana Jones has like a single run-in with this artifact smuggler.
Yep.
But he hates his own dad so much that he latches on to this thing and this tiny interaction that they had and decides to base his life around that. Because I just really want Kendall to take that and eventually be able to see wisdom in it and, you know, grow up to be at least a U.S. Marshal. Maybe not Raylan. But...
I'm just picturing Raylan handing him the money and him going, "This belongs in a bank!"
That is outstanding.
So yeah, he becomes some kind of like weird frauds investigator for a bank who like is really hardcore about his job and carries a gun. And everybody's like, "Oh, I guess."
Yes. So one can dream. But yeah, Raylan again tries to make an impact. Don't really see what kind of payoff it's going to have, but he does sort of on impulse give Kendall the $2,000 and just says, "I don't want anything from you. Keep your head down, tuck this away, think of the future." And and then he goes to talk to Wendy, where he learns that she doesn't know anything about why her brothers are in Mexico. She just needed him.
I loved that reveal. She's just like, "Yeah, I'm sorry. I got nothing for you." She does seem sorry too. Like... Yeah,
she does. I think she likes Raylan a little more than she wants to admit.
Agreed.
So yeah, Raylan it sort of leaves Raylan just shaking his head and going, "I could have been in Florida right now."
Yeah.
Yeah.
To which she's like, "What?" And he's like, "Nothing." Ugh, God. He cracks me up, man. He's such a drama queen, but then he wants to act like he's not. Yeah, you are,
Absolutely. Buddy. Absolutely. So back in prison, Ava talks to Judith and lets her know that it's coming in. And she refuses to say how, which Judith is not happy about.
Yeah.
And she explains, says, "I don't know you, I don't understand you, and I don't buy into you." And that the whole God thing just doesn't add up.
Yeah, and Judith just says, "I'm disappointed," which is a really weird response.
Yeah.
I don't know what to think of that. Like, I'm not sure what she means by disappointed. Disappointed that she doesn't trust her, or disappointed that she doesn't believe in God, or both, or I don't know.
Yeah, she's kind of enigmatic, you know. She has that. She says earlier in an earlier episode that her relationship with God and her preaching about God is 100% real. It's what she says, but she's also not foolish about how you survive in here.
Right? Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of it's an awkward sort of a conversation because Judith is giving away nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know about her, man. I'm very curious, though.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know, she has the potential to be somebody really interesting, I feel like. I like this actress's vibe.
Yeah.
She's almost got, like, a Patti LuPone thing going on a little bit. Like, just to
see that, sure.
You know what I mean? So, yeah, I'm curious about her.
She does have her own loofah. We know that much about her.
Yeah, that whole scene there with everybody. It's just so surprising how like cozy and what do you call it? Like convivial it is. Yeah, sure. You know.
You know, I just started listening to a new podcast called Ear Hustle. Have you heard of this?
No.
It is a podcast that is directed and created and produced and everything by prisoners in San Quentin. And
okay.
There's only one episode out so far, but they won a contest through Radiotopia, and they're going to be shows about what life in prison is actually like, because lots of people seem interested, and the movies and TV just don't really ever portray it the way it actually is.
Okay.
So I'm kind of excited about it. They have one episode out, and it's about getting a cellmate, and it sounds a lot like. Well, in the show, there's one person who's on the outside as interviewer, I guess, and she kind of compares it to like dating, because apparently you can like request who your cellmates are going to be, and when your cellmate gets out, you can kind of try to find somebody to room with you. And yeah, and it's not a maximum security prison or anything, and I think rules are certainly different there, but it's really interesting to hear prisoners talk about finding the right cellmate and how to live with somebody in such tiny quarters, but it's not just assigned and you're stuck with it forever no matter what.
Yeah, interesting.
So,
yeah,
it's pretty interesting. And I was thinking a lot about Justified, actually, because the view of prison that we get, it is sort of what you expect, but there's lots of little details that are just different. So I'm excited to see where that one goes. I hope it's good.
Okay, yeah, definitely. What's it called again?
It's called Ear Hustle, which is apparently like...
That's so funny.
Yeah, it's prison slang for people who are nosy.
Oh, okay.
Gossip. Yeah, they got the ear hustle. Anyway, back in Mexico, Boyd and Daryl and the boys are celebrating because the van that the cops took off with was just filled with bodies, and they managed to stash all the drugs in their little car. And the bodies in the truck are now the problem of the Mexican police.
I just love it. I had no idea. And it's really, this is the thing that I was going to have questions about, though. I was just like, how can they just hand the truck over and there's nothing that can connect them back to it? The truck wasn't like licensed in anybody's name or leased, or like, you know what I mean? Like, there's nothing that they can follow back to these guys? I guess not. Or if there is, they just don't think they're actually going to do it because they probably just, taking the truck under the circumstances that they did, they don't want to draw attention back to it. Probably.
Yeah. I imagine part of it is you kind of have to cop to being a corrupt police. Yeah. You have to admit to being a corrupt police officer, for one, which everyone kind of knows, I guess. Mm-hmm. But, and then two, unless Boyd signed his name on the rental agreement for the truck, mm-hmm. then, we met some guys in the desert.
I guess, too, the other thing that I was kind of concerned about was if they are Mexican cops, then the bodies aren't on the American side of the border, right? Does that count?
This is also true.
Does that technically fulfill the arrangement? Because that's not really what he promised. So it does get them off their hands and hopefully to somebody who isn't going to be able to really out them. But I'm not positive about that. So
that's a really good question. No,
I'm just kind of I guess we'll see.
We shall see. Yeah, exactly. The show isn't big on loose ends. So
yeah.
We will have to wait and see. So while they talk, Flores shows up, Daryl's guy that they didn't really want to call, and he's there, and he is totally happy to get paid and get their drugs across the border. They don't actually have money, but they're going to give him a brick, and everything's good. And Boyd just happens to mention something that's awfully forgiving of you
mm-hmm.
after all that stuff with your sister.
Yeah.
And Daryl just sort of dances right past it as
quickly
as he can.
We good, right? We good? I mean, I told him that story about your sister. And the guy's like, yeah, it's fine. I'm like, oh my God, you guys are good at this. Like, he's not as good as Boyd, but he's pretty good.
Yeah.
If he wasn't dealing with somebody as smart as Boyd, this might just go right over their head,
Right.
But unfortunately for him, he's dealing with Boyd.
And he's dealing with Jimmy, who speaks Spanish.
Right? Yeah.
And because he doesn't look like he speaks Spanish,
Mm-hmm.
some of the guys in Flores's entourage have no problem talking openly in Spanish about how, they have this. Essentially, Daryl set this up all along, and that they have walked into a trap. Essentially, I don't have it up in front of me. I forget exactly what they say, but
I have it in front of me, but I haven't gotten there yet. Ponytail just said something to the other one about Daryl calling his boss on Martes. Oh, that's Tuesday. Okay, you don't even have to tell me what that means. Daryl had this plan the whole time. Yes, sir. And he says, "What do you want to do?" And Boyd says, "You heard the man. Let's go home." So, yeah, is that it? Is he planning on? Are they planning on killing Boyd and Jimmy and taking everything? Because that is a fucking hell of a play to make. And,
sure is.
I mean, I guess you could. And once you get back to Kentucky, who's going to do shit about it? I guess you could. This is the kind of thing that I wouldn't be a good criminal mastermind, because there would just be shit that I'm like, no, you just don't do that. That's crazy. You know, it's like Red Wedding style stuff that I'm just like, no, that's rude. But yeah, what's stopping you? I guess nothing. So
right. So yeah, they're playing along for the time being. In the meantime, Boyd calls shotgun.
Yep.
And they're headed home. Then we end our episode with Raylan and Allison. Raylan shows up, and she declines his offer of wine. He drinks a beer. They talk about all the stuff with Kendall, and Raylan gets right back on track with, "Hey, Florida."
Mm-hmm.
And then Allison drops the bomb that she is breaking it off.
Yeah.
And Raylan's reaction is, how about that? Man is the master of understatement.
Right? Yeah, she doesn't even want to let him into the apartment. He's like, "Are you going to keep me in the hallway all night?" And she stops and purses her lips and thinks about it for a second. And then it's just like, yeah, okay. And when he's like, "Well, you know, you understand why I hesitated to get involved." And she's like, "Oh, don't apologize, please," which could be taken as like, you don't have to apologize. But I think she's just like, "Oh, don't fucking try to apologize for that," was how I took it.
That's true.
You know,
could read that either. We could read it that way, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And he gives, like, you know, he tells her about giving Kendall the money. And I can't help but wonder if he just did it to be able to tell her about it later. You know, like...
That would be fairly in keeping with him.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
I don't want to ascribe that motivation to it, because I think it's a really nice gesture.
Exactly.
But
like, I want to believe his thing about kind of identifying with him.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There's something about that, the way that he just drops that into the conversation, that really does make me think maybe she had a sense that he was full of shit or being an asshole, and he decided he needed to do an extra thing. And it just happened to not really be enough by then, because she'd already made up her mind, you know? Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that idea before, but God, that would be exactly like him.
Yeah. Sorry, Raylan, but you can be an asshole.
A little bit. Yeah, and that is our episode with Raylan kind of in shock. Yeah. Yeah, that is it. So
it's such
Raylan
a funny, like weird quote, I'm putting air quotes, cliffhanger, because it really doesn't feel like the kind of thing that the audience is going to be that invested in, that you want to end an episode on that note.
No, the Boyd scene would have been a stronger kind of
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of a weird moment where he's just like, "Well, how about that?" As if she just pulled a gun on him or something. Like, they act like it's just so much more high stakes than it was. And it's like, we're very used to Raylan's relationships ending. This is actually a pretty balanced and stable end for him, all things considered. So that weird, like, abrupt end just didn't suit the scene, I didn't feel like.
They've done that a handful of times where he will have a reaction it's not witty and it's not like clever. It's just him going, huh. and then they cut to commercial or cut to credits. And yeah, sometimes it's really effective, and sometimes less so. And this, I think, was one of the less so.
Yeah, I feel like when it's effective, it's him more talking to himself, and the person that he had been interacting with has walked away. But in this, it's him just saying that with the two of them sitting next to each other on the couch. So he says this awkward thing, and then it just ends with them still sitting there. So you really get the sense that, like, something is supposed to happen after, but what could possibly happen after? You know, like, if there was some big surprise, that's what they would have ended the episode with. Yeah. Or they should have ended it with her saying that to him and closing the door in his face and him walking away. You know, and saying that under his breath as he walks away. But it was just the way that the whole scene was set that kind of, I was just like, y'all seem to be really overestimating how important this is going to be to your audience. Like, no, I don't think people are going to care that much, but okay, you know?
Yeah, you know, they've done this enough times, and every time they do it, I have the same image in my head, and it's, I don't know that Chris Tex listens to our show, but it reminds me of, there's an episode of Buffy that ends with her and another character sitting there facing each other about to have a conversation.
Oh, and okay. Then, I think I know the one you mean.
Yeah, and then the next episode opens up exactly on that moment, and they start to have their conversation. Mm-hmm. And I keep waiting for Justified to do the same thing, because they do end these conversations and their scenes in odd places where it seems like there's a lot more to be said.
Right.
But then again, maybe the point of it is there really isn't much more to be said, despite however much talking there might be. So I don't know. But every time they do that little trick that they just pulled there, I think about that Buffy episode.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Okay. I know the one you mean. I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, I mean, if the next episode starts right where this one left off, then okay. But even so, it just feels like giving this moment so much more importance than it should really have.
Yeah, it really is. It's not much of a... I don't think we've had time, or we haven't been given the time or the reason to get invested in Allison.
Yeah, exactly.
It would be one thing if she was like golden, flawless social worker, but she's not.
Yeah, and not like, she doesn't even have to be flawless. I just need to know anything about her, because I feel everything I know has been filtered through what's happening with Raylan. So I don't feel invested in her personally. It's all feels like I'm either not trusting the information that I have, or I'm not trusting her motivations for what she's done that I'm sure that she has done. You know, like everything just feels so uncertain surrounding her.
Yeah, I think the motivation thing is what I was trying to drive at. But yeah, that's what it is we don't really know where she stands on much. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Yeah, so we don't have any weight invested on that side of the scale. Yeah, it's weird. But with that said, you know, it's an interesting wrinkle in their evolving relationship. The fact that they no longer have a relationship. Mm-hmm. And I am, you know, and then we have Boyd, and what is going on here? You know, like you said, this season has done a very good job of keeping us in the dark, and we're not used to that.
Yeah, definitely.
So we'll have to see what happens from here. It could be anything.
Dun, dun, dun.
See that cliffhanger? Like that?
I won't be able to know for 2 weeks. Well, that's not true. I can watch that shit right now, but we won't be talking about it for 2 weeks. All right, cool. Well, guys, I want to say hi to new patrons because I've got some. So we have this last 2 weeks: Samuel Burrell, Deandra, A.F. Tanith, Tanfasi, Renee Pope Monroe, Dawn Smith, Ryan Sugas, Rosalie Oceana Kolb, Susan, Sheila Murray, and Hannah Furr all became patrons this week. So in the past 2 weeks. So welcome to all of you guys. A couple of you are $10 and up, so you will be getting the June postcards, which were designed by Michelle from Hot Wheels and Glue Guns on Etsy. So thank you very much to Michelle for donating those to me for this month. And y'all got in under the wire for me sending those out. And if you are $5 and above, you will have access to Twin Peaks, which I'm sorry that we haven't done Twin Peaks. It's been, I think, 3 weeks in a row. We've had some issues, or 2 weeks, I guess it'll be, because we didn't do one this week and we won't next week. But Maggie, who I record with during the day, has had kids homesick from school, and so she hasn't been able to have the free time during the day like she used to. But we will be picking that back up, hopefully, once I am done with vacation. And yeah, we're getting towards the end of the second season, and then we're going to do the movie, and then we're doing the third season. So, yeah, so that'll be fun. And all patrons will be able to access the upcoming Godfather episode that I'll be doing. I've never seen the movies, and
Yay.
I finally reached my goal on Patreon, and I am going to be watching them live on camera, probably on Sunday afternoon. And then I will be recording Monday night with Rashawn, and I'll post that up. And so if you're a patron, you'll have access to that. So I'm excited to that. I'm not doing the third one because everybody says it's terrible.
Watch it. It's part of the story.
I'll probably watch it eventually, but if I'm going to marathon all the movies, watching 3 almost 4-hour long movies in one day, if I don't have to, I'm not gonna.
That's fair. That's fair. But don't forget about it. It's, I get where people come from, but it's a part of the story. Anyway, continue. Sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, Krista, I think, was the one who said that it should have been straight to DVD, if at all. Was the way that she phrased it. I was like, God damn, that's harsh.
I'll say that the difference between them in my mind is that the sequel, Godfather Part 2, Francis Ford Coppola argued like hell with the studios to get it called The Godfather Part 2, because you just didn't do that in those days with your sequel.
Okay.
Part 3, the studio argued him into making the movie called The Godfather Part 3. He didn't want it called that. And that, I don't know, again, maybe you need to see the movies to get more context, but that to me is the difference in how those movies were made. He really wanted to make sure that it was called Godfather Part 2. The third one, he wanted to give it a whole different name.
Okay.
Maybe that doesn't make sense to anyone else, but I always thought it crystallized things nicely.
Yeah, I don't know yet, but I'll get back to you. So yeah, that's about all I wanted to mention. Oh, and I did an episode that is free to anyone who signs up for the Unspoiled newsletter on Facebook. If you go to facebook.com/unspoiledpod and click sign up, you will get access to a 2-hour long episode covering Wonder Woman that I did with Owen and Maggie. And that is a special perk for anybody who signs up for that. You sign up for the newsletter, you'll get a confirmation link to click to actually finish signing up, and then you will get your email with the Dropbox link to download the episode. So yeah, you should do that if you want to listen to us talk about the pros and cons of Wonder Woman. I think that's everything. Is there anything that you would like to add, sir?
No, nothing new. Find me on Twitter at Al Kingsley. Right now, I was at Origins Game Fair last week, and so my Twitter feed is full of pictures of board games and stuff. But I've been a lot more active on there recently, so please come find me, tweet me, and I will see everybody in 2 weeks for a new episode of Justified.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for listening, and if you have enjoyed the show, please leave a review on iTunes, and we will see you in 2 weeks with a new episode. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Bye, everybody.
On this lonely road, trying to make it home, doing it by my lonesome, pissed off, who wants some? I'm fighting for my soul, God, get at you, boy. You try to go God, fall back, I go hard. On this lonely road, trying to make it home, doing it by my lonesome, pissed off, who wants some? I see them long, hard times to come. My life is ill, son. Prepared to kill, son. Paradox of pain, baby, it's real, son. Lonely traveler, ain't trying to value you, but if you're feeling tough, dog, I walk up all challenges. Ain't got no family.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.